Have you ever noticed how one angry person can change the mood of an entire room without saying very much? A family can be laughing one moment, then one person walks in carrying frustration, and suddenly everyone becomes quiet. Children stop talking. Conversations become shorter. Smiles disappear. No one announced that the atmosphere had changed, yet everyone feels it. Now here's the question. Why does this happen? Is anger simply an emotion, or does it quietly shape the environment around us in ways we rarely notice? Ancient teachers believed that emotions never remain private for long. Whether we intend it or not, they spread through our words, our expressions, our tone, and even our silence. Today's message isn't about pretending anger never exists. Anger is a natural human emotion. The real question is this: who remains in control, you or your anger? Imagine throwing a single stone into a calm lake. The stone disappears within seconds, but the ripples continue traveling long after it's gone. Ancient wisdom often compares our emotions to those ripples. One moment of uncontrolled anger rarely stays confined to that single moment. It spreads. A harsh word becomes another harsh word. One argument creates another. One tense evening affects the next morning. Before long, an entire household begins reacting to emotions that started with one person. This doesn't happen because people enjoy conflict. It happens because emotions are contagious. Just as laughter encourages laughter, calm encourages calm. Anger often invites more anger. Here's something few people realize. Most people don't choose to become angry individuals. They simply repeat angry reactions until those reactions become automatic. At first, it's frustration over traffic, then work, then family, then small inconveniences. Eventually, anger stops being an occasional visitor. It becomes a permanent resident. Ancient teachers warned that repeated emotions slowly shape character. What we practice consistently eventually becomes part of who we are. That's why two people can face the exact same problem. One responds with patience. The other explodes. The situation isn't always different. The habit is. Before blaming the people around you, ask yourself something more powerful. What atmosphere do I create when I enter a room? Do people feel encouraged? Do they feel safe? Do they feel heard? Or do they immediately become careful with every word they say? That question is uncomfortable, but it is also transformational, because awareness is where change begins. And here's the surprising truth. Ancient wisdom teaches that anger doesn't just affect relationships. It quietly steals something even more valuable: your ability to think clearly. Imagine lighting a single match in a dry forest. The flame is small, almost harmless. You could even extinguish it with your fingers. But leave it unattended for just a little while, and that tiny flame can consume an entire landscape. Ancient wisdom teaches that anger behaves in much the same way. Very few people wake up intending to damage their relationships, create tension in their homes, or push away the people they love. Instead, it begins with one careless reaction, one impatient response, one moment of speaking before thinking, then another and another, until eventually, what was once an occasional emotion quietly becomes the atmosphere everyone else learns to live in. The frightening part is this: the person carrying the anger often becomes the last one to notice how much has changed them. Have you ever noticed how someone else's mood can affect your own? Perhaps your morning began peacefully. You were hopeful, focused, optimistic. Then you encountered someone who was frustrated. Maybe it was a coworker, a customer, a family member, or even a stranger. Within minutes, your own mood began to change. Nothing physical happened. No one touched you. Yet somehow, their emotional state found its way into yours. Ancient teachers understood this long before modern psychology began studying emotional influence. They observed that emotion spread through tone, facial expressions, body language, and repeated behavior. One person's anger often becomes another person's anxiety. That anxiety becomes silence. Silence creates misunderstanding. Misunderstanding produces more conflict. Soon, nobody remembers how the problem started. They only remember how the room felt. This is why wise people paid close attention to the emotional climate they created. They understood that every conversation plants a seed. The question is, what kind of seed are we planting? Most people think anger costs them only a few minutes. Ancient wisdom suggests the price is often much higher. Think about the opportunities that disappear because of uncontrolled reactions. A friendship ends. A business partnership collapses. A child stops sharing their thoughts. A spouse withdraws emotionally. Trust, once broken, often takes years to rebuild. Sometimes it never fully returns. The tragedy is that many people regret words spoken in anger, but regret alone cannot erase the memory left behind. It's like squeezing toothpaste from a tube. Once it's out, you cannot put it back exactly as it was. That is why the wise learned to pause before speaking, not because they were weak, because they understood the value of restraint. There's an old story told in many forms throughout history. Two blacksmiths worked side by side in the same village. Both were equally skilled. Both had the same tools. Both worked equally hard. Yet one workshop was always filled with apprentices eager to learn. The other remained empty. A traveler became curious and asked one of the apprentices, "Why does everyone choose his blacksmith?" The young apprentice smiled. "It isn't because he makes better tools. It's because he never lets his anger shape the people around him. When we make mistakes, he teaches us. He corrects us. But he never humiliates us. So we work harder because we aren't afraid." The traveler then visited the second workshop. There he saw fear. Every small mistake brought shouting. Every delay brought criticism. No one stayed long enough to master the craft. Both blacksmiths possessed talent. Only one created an atmosphere where people could grow. The lesson is timeless. People rarely perform their best where they constantly feel afraid, whether in families, friendships, workplaces, or communities. Atmosphere shapes potential. Some people believe staying calm means becoming passive. Ancient wisdom teaches something completely different. Calm is not weakness. Calm is controlled strength. Anyone can react. Anyone can shout. Anyone can lose control. Very few people can remain composed while emotions are rising. That kind of self-control is far more difficult. Imagine a ship crossing a violent sea. The waves are powerful. The wind is relentless. Yet the captain keeps both hands on the wheel. He doesn't deny the storm. He simply refuses to surrender control to it. That is emotional maturity. Not pretending storms don't exist, but refusing to let them decide your direction. One of the greatest losses caused by uncontrolled anger is something many people never notice. It clouds judgment. When emotions become louder than wisdom, good decisions become difficult. We interrupt instead of listening. We assume instead of asking. We attack instead of understanding. Later, when the anger fades, we often wonder, why did I say that? Why did I react that way? The answer is simple. Anger temporarily narrowed our perspective. Ancient teachers encourage people to delay important decisions during moments of intense emotion, not because emotions are evil, but because wisdom requires clarity. And clarity rarely grows in the middle of emotional storms. Before today ends, notice your emotional influence, not your intentions. Your influence. When you walk into your home, does the room become lighter or heavier? Do people feel encouraged to speak or careful to stay silent? The answer isn't meant to produce guilt. It's meant to create awareness. Because awareness is where transformation begins. And in the next part, you'll discover something remarkable. Ancient wisdom doesn't simply teach us to suppress anger. It teaches us how to transform it into patience, understanding, and strength. And that transformation has the power to change not only your relationships, but the atmosphere of every place you enter. What if I told you that the strongest person in the room is not the loudest, not the one who always wins the argument, not even the one who has the final word? According to ancient wisdom, the strongest person is often the one who knows when not to react. That may sound simple, but think about it. How many friendships have ended because someone couldn't pause for just 10 seconds? How many families carry wounds that began with one sentence spoken in anger? How many opportunities disappeared because emotion spoke before wisdom had a chance? Here's the remarkable truth. Anger is an emotion. It doesn't have to become your identity. The moment you understand that difference, you begin to reclaim something priceless: your ability to shape the atmosphere around you instead of being controlled by it. There's an old story about a wise craftsman whose apprentices admired his patience. One day, a young student asked him, "Master, why do you never seem to lose your temper?" The old man smiled and placed a cup of water on the table. He picked up a handful of dust and held it over the cup. "If I drop this now," he said, "the water becomes cloudy. But if I wait until the wind settles and my hands are steady, the water remains clear." Then he looked at his apprentice and said, "Most people speak while the dust is still falling." That simple lesson carries profound truth. When emotions rise, our thoughts become clouded. We assume motives. We exaggerate problems. We hear only what confirms our frustration. But when we learn to pause, even for a few moments, we give wisdom time to catch up with emotion. That pause has saved countless relationships. It has prevented arguments from becoming permanent divisions, and has allowed many people to respond in ways they later felt proud of instead of ashamed. There's a world of difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is immediate. It is driven by emotion. It seeks relief more than resolution. A response is intentional. It listens before speaking. It seeks understanding before judgment. Imagine someone insults you publicly. A reaction says, "I'll make sure they regret saying that." A response asks, "What is the wisest way to handle this?" The outcome can be dramatically different. Ancient teachers understood that every response becomes part of your reputation. People may forget the disagreement. They rarely forget how you handled it. Many people wait for others to change first. If they stop shouting, then I'll be calm. If they apologize first, then I'll forgive. If they become patient, then I will too. But ancient wisdom turns that thinking upside down. It teaches that transformation often begins with one person choosing a different path. Imagine entering a room where everyone is tense. Voices are raised. Faces are filled with frustration. Now imagine one person lowers their voice instead of raising it. One person listens instead of interrupting. One person asks, "Can we solve this together?" Suddenly, the emotional direction of the room begins to shift, not because the problem disappeared, but because someone chose wisdom over impulse. Atmospheres change one decision at a time. Many people underestimate how powerful calm words can be. Gentle words are not weak words. They are disciplined words. Think about the people whose advice has stayed with you for years. Were they always the loudest? Probably not. Often, they spoke quietly, patiently, thoughtfully. Their calmness made people feel safe enough to listen. Ancient wisdom teaches that a gentle answer has the power to calm conflict before it grows. Not every disagreement needs a winner. Sometimes the greatest victory is preserving a relationship. Imagine how different families, workplaces, and friendships will become if more people focus on understanding instead of simply being understood. One mistake many people make is believing they will suddenly become patient during difficult moments. Patience isn't created in the storm. It is prepared before the storm arrives. A musician doesn't practice only during the concert. An athlete doesn't train only during the championship. Likewise, emotional strength is developed in ordinary moments. It grows when you choose gratitude instead of complaint. When you refuse to let small inconveniences control your mood. When you learn to listen without rushing to defend yourself. These daily choices strengthen your character little by little. Then, when life becomes difficult, patience is no longer something you hope to find. It is already part of who you are. Ancient teachers believed self-control was one of the greatest forms of wealth. Why? Because it protects everything else. It protects your reputation, your relationships, your opportunities, your peace of mind. People naturally trust those who remain steady under pressure. They seek advice from those who think clearly during conflict. They feel safe around those whose emotions do not change with every circumstance. That kind of influence cannot be bought. It must be built, and it is built one calm decision at a time. But perhaps the greatest lesson is still ahead, because mastering anger isn't only about avoiding conflict. It's about becoming the kind of person whose presence brings peace wherever they go. Imagine two people walking into the exact same room. Neither of them says a word. Yet within moments, everyone notices a difference. When the first person arrives, conversations become guarded. People stop laughing. The room feels tense, as if everyone is waiting for something to go wrong. Then imagine the second person. They enter with quiet confidence. Their smile is genuine. They listen more than they speak. Somehow, without demanding attention, they make everyone around them feel comfortable. What was the difference? It wasn't wealth. It wasn't status. It wasn't education. It was the atmosphere they carried within themselves. Ancient wisdom has long taught that every person becomes a source of either peace or tension. The question is not whether you influence the people around you. The question is what kind of influence you leave behind. Think about the people you have met throughout your life. Some are remembered because they achieved great success. Others are remembered because of how they made people feel. Years later, you may forget what someone wore. You may forget what car they drove. You may even forget many of the conversations you had with them. But you rarely forget how you felt in their presence. Some people leave behind peace. Others leave behind pressure. Some inspire confidence. Others leave emotional exhaustion. Ancient teachers often reminded their students that the greatest gift you can give another person is not always advice. Sometimes it is simply your calm presence. A peaceful heart has a remarkable way of calming anxious minds. Many families unknowingly pass anger from one generation to the next. A child grows up in a home where shouting solves disagreements. Years later, without intending to, that same child reacts the same way in adulthood, not because they wanted to repeat the pattern, but because it became familiar. Ancient wisdom encourages us to ask a difficult question. Will this pattern end with me? Every generation has the opportunity to choose differently. Imagine being remembered as the person who stopped the cycle, the person who chose patience instead of rage, listening instead of interrupting, forgiveness instead of resentment. That decision doesn't just change your future. It changes the future of everyone connected to you. One calm response today can echo through generations. An old teacher once compared the human heart to a garden. If a garden is ignored, weeds grow naturally. No one needs to plant them. But beautiful flowers require attention. They require watering, care, patience. Our emotions work the same way. If we never examine our thoughts, if we never deal with resentment, if we never learn to forgive, negative emotions quietly take root. Before long, anger begins growing where peace once lived. But here's the encouraging news. Gardens can be restored, one weed at a time, one healthy habit at a time, one intentional choice at a time. Every act of patience is like planting another flower. Every kind word waters that garden. Every moment of self-control strengthens it. Eventually, what once felt heavy begins to feel peaceful again. Many people admire those who can control others. Ancient wisdom admires those who can control themselves. Anyone can raise their voice. Not everyone can lower it. Anyone can criticize. Not everyone can encourage. Anyone can react. Not everyone can respond with wisdom. Real strength is revealed when emotions are strongest. That is, when character becomes visible. And character is what people trust. It is what families depend on. It is what leaders are remembered for. When you become emotionally steady, you don't just improve your own life. You become an anchor for everyone around you. In a world filled with noise, calm becomes unforgettable. Imagine someone describing you years from now. What would you hope they say? When they entered the room, everyone became nervous. Or, when they entered the room, everything felt lighter. Every conversation, every reaction, every choice. You are quietly shaping your legacy, not with grand speeches, but with ordinary moments. The way you answer your children, the way you speak to your spouse, the way you respond to criticism, the way you treat strangers. These seemingly small decisions become the story people remember. Never underestimate the influence of a peaceful life. Here's a challenge I want you to try. For the next 7 days, before responding in frustration, pause. Take one deep breath. Ask yourself one simple question. Will my next words make this atmosphere lighter or heavier? That single question has the power to transform relationships, to prevent arguments, to restore trust, to change homes, to strengthen friendships. and perhaps to change you. Because every great transformation begins with one intentional decision. Not someday. Today. Remember this. Anger is a natural emotion, but it does not have to become the architect of your relationships. You have a choice every day. You can carry frustration into every room, or you can carry peace. One creates fear. The other creates trust. One pushes people away. The other invites them closer. Ancient wisdom reminds us that true greatness is not measured by how many people obey you. It is measured by how many people become better, because you were in their lives. So become the person whose presence brings hope, whose words build instead of break, whose patience speaks louder than anger ever could. Because the atmosphere around you is rarely created by circumstances. It is most often created by the condition of the heart you bring into them. If this message spoke to your heart, write peace in the comments below as your commitment to becoming someone who creates a better atmosphere wherever you go. If this video encouraged you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our weekly lessons on ancient wisdom, wealth, emotional mastery, purpose, and abundant living. And always remember this timeless truth. People may forget your achievements. They may forget your possessions, but they will never forget how your presence made them feel. Choose to be remembered as someone who brought peace wherever they went.